The cemetery was quiet, almost eerily so, under the silver wash of an early morning fog. Gravestones jutted from the ground like solemn sentinels, their inscriptions blurred by age and weather. Only the rustle of dead leaves and the occasional caw of a crow broke the silence. At the far edge of the cemetery, near a freshly turned mound, a little girl knelt. Her dress was simple, faded blue, worn at the edges, but clean enough that it betrayed someone had cared. In her small hands, she held a worn doll, its fabric face smudged, one button eye missing. She whispered softly, words meant only for the one lying beneath the soil. "I brought you your favorite," she murmured. "I promised I'd come every week." Her tiny fingers shook as she lowered the doll onto the mound. She brushed the wet strands of hair from her face, eyes glimmering with unshed tears. The doll's dress was patched with care, every stitch a memory, a connection to someone she had lost too soon. Officer Mark Dawson watched from a distance, leaning against his patrol car. He had been on this beat for 15 years, yet never had he seen anything like this. The girl, barely 7, showed a quiet dignity that spoke volumes about the pain she carried. He felt his chest tighten. A familiar ache he had learned to live with, the ache that came from seeing too many innocent lives shattered. He wanted to approach, to speak, to offer comfort. But he hesitated. Some moments were sacred, he reminded himself, and this was one of them. The girl straightened and whispered again. "I left it just for you." "Daddy." Mark's heart twisted. He knew nothing about the child's father, yet something in her tone told him this was a story far darker than a simple grief visit. He took a cautious step forward, careful not to startle her. "Hi there," he said softly. "That's a beautiful doll you've got." The girl flinched, clutching the doll closer. Her small voice trembled. I just want him to know I'm here." Mark nodded, keeping his distance. "I understand. Sometimes just being here, it's enough." For a long moment, she said nothing, simply staring at the mound as if trying to send a message that words could not carry. Then she made a sudden, deliberate move. She lifted the doll carefully and placed it on top of the grave, adjusting its posture so that it sat facing the small patch of morning light. Mark watched, puzzled. There was something unusual about the doll, something more than the patched clothing or missing button eye. He noticed a small envelope, taped discreetly to its back. The girl didn't see him notice. She turned away, brushing leaves from her hands, seemingly unaware that her secret was visible. Her small fingers fumbled with the edges of the envelope. Then she leaned down and whispered into the mist. "I hope this reaches you wherever you are." Mark's instincts kicked in. That envelope was no ordinary letter. Something in the girl's movements, the careful attention, the quiet fear that lingered behind her wide, innocent eyes, told him this was urgent. He stepped closer, clearing his throat. "Hey, would you like some help?" Hey, the girl froze, eyes wide with alarm. "No! No one can!" She stopped herself, lips pressed together. Her gaze darted to the nearby woods, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Mark's brow furrowed. The tension was palpable. He was trained to read body language, to sense danger before it became obvious, and right now every fiber of his being screamed that the girl was in peril. "Okay," he said gently. "I won't move. I just want to make sure you're safe." The girl's hands shook. She turned fully toward him, and for the first time, he noticed the bruises on her wrists, faint but unmistakable. Her shoulders hunched, a physical armor she had learned to wear far too young. I can't tell anyone," she whispered. "They'll find me. They'll—" Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. Mark's chest tightened further. He had been a police officer long enough to recognize the signs of fear and control. Whatever had happened to this girl was deliberate, cruel, and ongoing. He knelt a respectful distance away. "It's okay. You're safe right now. I promise. Just, maybe tell me what's inside that envelope." The girl shook her head violently. "No, no one can know. Not yet. Please." Mark respected her hesitation, but curiosity and concern gnawed at him. His eyes drifted to the doll again. Carefully, so as not to alarm her, he crouched slightly to get a better look. The envelope was plain, unmarked, and taped snugly to the doll's back. A corner peeked out, revealing a folded piece of paper. The girl seemed aware that he had looked, yet she didn't pull it away. Instead, she whispered, almost to herself, "I have to leave it where he can find it." Mark swallowed hard. The words struck him with sudden clarity. This wasn't just a message. This was a cry for help, a breadcrumb leading to something bigger. His mind raced. How long had she been doing this? Who was she leaving it for? And why hadn't anyone else intervened? A gust of wind rattled the gravestones. Mark noticed movement in the distance, a figure approaching from the cemetery's far entrance. Hooded, purposeful, moving swiftly across the wet grass. His pulse quickened. He didn't recognize the silhouette, but he did recognize the danger. The girl stood frozen, tiny frame rigid. The approaching figure slowed slightly, then bent down toward the doll. Mark's instinct screamed. Something was wrong. Before he could react, the figure straightened, pulling something small from the doll's envelope. Mark could barely make out a glint of metal in the mist. A key, a USB drive, he couldn't be sure. But whatever it was, it had the girl frozen in place, and Mark knew he had seconds to act. "Hey!" Mark shouted, stepping forward. The figure froze, turning toward him with something unreadable in their eyes. The girl gasped. "No!" "Don't." But Mark was already moving, closing the distance, careful but fast. The figure bolted, sprinting toward the tree line. Mark chased, adrenaline surging. He had never run so fast on wet grass, heart hammering, mist swirling around him like a cloak of tension. The girl ran after them too, but Mark grabbed her arm gently. "Stay here! You're safe!" "I'll handle it." A tear streaked down her face, and she nodded, gripping the doll tightly. Her whispered words floated behind him. "Please, don't let them get it." Mark's mind raced as he pursued the figure into the foggy trees. Each step brought more uncertainty. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle in the underbrush a potential threat. Minutes felt like hours. And then, as the figure slowed at a clearing, Mark saw the truth. The envelope wasn't just a message. Inside were photographs, documents, names. Evidence of something horrifying, something that made his stomach turn. Human trafficking, kidnappings, corruption that reached beyond this sleepy town. Mark froze. The weight of what he had discovered pressed down on him. One wrong move could endanger the little girl, the doll, and possibly countless others. He needed backup. Fast. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Dawson. I've got a critical situation. Need immediate assistance. Route 19 Cemetery. Repeat, Route 19. Possible kidnapping evidence. Minor involved. A static." Then confirmation. Units were dispatched. Within minutes, black SUVs with flashing lights emerged through the fog, converging on the clearing. The figure tried to flee but was surrounded quickly and expertly by tactical officers. Mark caught his breath, heart pounding, and turned back toward the girl. She was still kneeling by the grave, clutching the doll, eyes wide with fear and relief. He approached slowly. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded faintly. Did he get it? Mark knelt beside her, speaking gently. "It's safe now. Everything's going to be okay." For the first time, a small smile broke through her tear-streaked face. She hugged the doll tightly, whispering, "Daddy, I hope you see this." Mark glanced at the doll, then at the little girl. This single act, leaving a doll at a grave with a secret message, had just saved lives. And he knew that whatever came next, this child had shown a courage far beyond her years. The sun began to rise, breaking through the mist, casting long golden rays across the cemetery. Gravestones glistened with dew. The girl looked up at Mark. "Will you help me?" she asked softly. Mark nodded. "Yes, I'll make sure you're safe. And everyone else, too." She handed him the doll. "Keep it until they know the truth." Mark took it carefully, understanding the weight of what he held. This wasn't just a toy. It was a message, a key, a lifeline. As he escorted her safely from the cemetery, he couldn't help but feel the enormity of what had happened. A small girl, a simple doll, and a note hidden inside had uncovered something sinister. Courage, he realized, didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through the hands of the smallest among us. The sound of sirens cut through the foggy morning, sharp and urgent. Black SUVs and unmarked police cars converged on the cemetery clearing, their lights flashing red and blue across gravestones wet with dew. Officer Mark Dawson shielded the little girl behind a stone, her small hands gripping his jacket as he scanned for threats. The figure who had taken the doll, a man in a dark hoodie, froze as tactical officers surrounded him from all sides. His face twisted in panic. He realized too late that escape was impossible. The evidence he had tried to seize from the doll's envelope was now in the hands of law enforcement. "Stay calm," Mark whispered to the girl. "You're safe now, I promise." Her tears streamed freely, but there was relief too. She had waited years to make her voice heard. One small act, leaving a doll at her father's grave, had triggered the rescue. The man was cuffed quickly and led away. The doll, now carefully held by Mark, was returned to the girl. He knelt to her level. "Everything you left in there, it's safe. You helped bring him down. She looked up at him, wide-eyed. Will they punish him? Mark nodded solemnly. Yes. Justice will be served. What you did, it's amazing. You're brave beyond your years. A team of FBI agents arrived, taking statements and securing the crime scene. One agent, tall with a calm but authoritative presence, approached Mark and the girl. Good work, he said quietly to Mark. We've been investigating this ring for months. This girl just gave us the break we needed. Mark's jaw tightened. She did all this by herself, just a child. The agent smiled faintly. Sometimes courage comes in the smallest packages. The girl clutched her doll tightly. I just wanted Daddy to know to make him proud. Mark glanced at the grave, the fresh soil still damp. The name engraved there was the reason she had acted so carefully, so courageously. Her father's death had been hidden, a crime that no one had uncovered until this tiny voice made itself heard. Do you understand what you've done? Mark asked gently. She nodded. I just did what I thought he would want me to do, tell the truth. Mark's eyes softened. You've done more than that. You saved lives. The agents worked quickly, gathering the evidence from the doll and securing the surrounding area. As the girl watched from a safe distance, she realized that the invisible hand of justice had finally touched her world. She could see the men who had hurt others, their schemes dismantled, their freedom revoked. Mark guided her gently to a patrol car. Do you want to come with me to talk to the others? To make sure they know what happened. She hesitated, then nodded. I want them to know the truth. He would want that. The drive back to headquarters was quiet, the girl clutching her doll. She spoke occasionally in whispers, asking questions about the men, about justice, and about what would happen next. Mark answered patiently, every word meant to reassure her, every gesture meant to protect the fragile courage that had just changed the course of an investigation. At the station, detectives and FBI agents surrounded her carefully, taking her statement and photographing the evidence. She was calm but precise, recounting every detail about the envelope, the doll, and the moment the man had tried to steal it. Her observations were meticulous. The way she had described the suspect, the timing, the objects, everything, it all added up. Mark watched silently, pride swelling in his chest. The little girl had carried a heavy burden, one that no child should ever bear, and she had handled it with courage, precision, and heart. When the statements were complete, the lead FBI agent turned to Mark. You know, he said quietly, this girl's going to make a difference. She already has. Her actions prevented this ring from harming more victims. She is remarkable. Mark nodded. Remarkable, yes. And she deserves to know it. The girl approached the doll once more, placing it carefully on the table. I hope Daddy can see that I tried. Mark knelt beside her. He would be proud. More proud than you can imagine. A moment of silence passed. The office buzzed quietly in the background, the sounds of phones, footsteps, and low conversation. But in that small space, it felt as if time had stopped. A child's courage had altered the path of justice. Outside, the sun broke fully through the mist, casting golden light across the city streets. Mark and the girl walked to the patrol car, the doll safely in her arms. She looked out at the city, tentative but hopeful. Do you think anyone else will find out? She asked. Mark smiled. They will. And when they do, they'll know what bravery looks like. They'll see how one small action, one note, one doll, can change everything. She nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. I just wanted him to know I didn't forget him. You didn't forget, Mark said softly. And no one else will either. Later, the girl was returned to the care of a family friend, someone who would watch over her while the investigation continued. But even as she walked away, Mark could see the weight of her courage, the quiet power she had wielded, lingering in her small frame. The investigation concluded swiftly. Arrests were made, charges filed, and the network dismantled. And yet, for Mark, the most remarkable part wasn't the resolution. It was the knowledge that a little girl's act of love, ingenuity, and courage had brought justice where none seemed possible. Weeks later, he returned to the cemetery. The mound remained, now with flowers laid by kind strangers who had heard of her bravery. The doll was gone, replaced by a single white rose. Mark knelt quietly, touching the stone gently. Thank you, whispered, for showing all of us what courage really looks like. From somewhere behind him, he heard a small voice. Officer Dawson. He turned, and the girl stood there, older in ways only sorrow and experience can age a child, but still holding the essence of bravery. I wanted to make sure you saw this, she said, pointing to the white rose. Mark smiled. I see it, and I'll never forget it. The little girl looked up at the sky, a hopeful glimmer in her eyes. He would be proud. Yes, Mark said. Yes, he would. The story of that doll, that note, and that child's courage spread quietly at first, then widely. News reports praised the FBI, the officers, the investigations, but those who knew the truth understood. The hero wasn't the uniform. The hero was a little girl who refused to be silenced, who acted when no one else could. And somewhere, in the silence of the cemetery, in the calm after the storm, courage and love had left their mark, indelible, unshakable. Unforgettable if this story moved you. If you believe even the smallest voice can change the world. Subscribe to Truth Arc for more real, life emotional thriller stories that show courage, justice, and hope. If you found a message hidden in a doll like this, would you risk everything to follow it or walk away? Comment below and share your answer.